So this script is going to be somewhat similar to one of the ones that we made previous. It's actually probably going to be slightly simpler than that one. So the one that we made in a previous video was not that one. This one, space clips with specified gaps. So just to remind you what that did, or if you haven't seen the video, just to let you know what that did. What do you want the gap to be? And if it's 1 second, it puts the clips with a 1 second gap in between. Maybe not the best example because these clips are all the same length, but if I just make them different lengths, run it again. So it spaces the clips out with 1 second increment in between all of them. This script we're going to do today is a variation on that. Instead of the space being constant between clips, what we're going to do is make a script that will space the clips out with a constant start point, like a grid-like start point, if that makes sense. So if we choose 1 second at 1 second intervals, our clip will begin, regardless of the length of the clip. Cool. So let's get into it. So new action. So yeah, let's have a similar name to this. Specified gap, space items with constant what do we call it? Space clips with constant start increment. Ugh, that's a horrible name. Whatever, that'll do. You can change the name later. All right, so we start with our function that we're going to put all of our instructions in, and then we call the function at the end of the file. There we go. All right, so let's write out what we are going to do. So this script is only going to work on selected items. It's not going to automatically happen to all items in the session. So like many of our scripts now, we start by count the selected items. If number of selected items is 0, then do not proceed. Right. Assuming that it's more than 0, 1 or more, get a reference to the first item. Get the start position of the first item. The reason why we're doing that specifically for the first one is our script is going to anchor at that first item. So if we do this with these 5 clips, we run the script, the first one is not going to move, but then each subsequent one is going to be spaced out according to that grid-like interval. So that's why we get a reference to the first one. Everything's going to anchor around that one. Cool. So at some point we will prompt the user for the desired grid interval. Okay. And then we store that grid interval as a variable. Probably call it grid interval. All right, so in a for loop, for each item that is selected, do get a reference to that item Is that it? Get a reference to that item. That can't be it. It's got to be more to this. It'll come to me. Move the item to be, so this is where our math comes in. So the position of the item will be first item start position plus grid interval times I. And remember, I is our iterating variable. You know, we've done this a few times now, but remember the format of the for loop is for I equals 0 until num of selected items minus 1 do. That's how we write that for loop. And remember that we start counting at 0. We don't start counting at 1. And the reason for that is the way that Reaper indexes, well, anything really, but the way that Reaper indexes selected items or a number of items is if we have these 5 selected, this is item number 0, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So it starts counting at 0. It doesn't start counting at 1. So that's why we do our loop from 0 until the number we want to reach minus 1. Because if we have 5 selected, number of selected items will be 5, but we go from 0 to 4, not 1 to 5. Hopefully that makes sense. And then we move the item. It seems too simple. If there's something I'm forgetting, I'm sure it will reveal itself, but I can't see straight away what it might be, so let's jump into it. So count the selected items. We'll go to our Reaper API that we love. Count selected media items. There we go. So it's a function that returns an integer. So we'll give it a name. Num of selected items. And our our project that we feed into the function has an index of 0. So what that refers to is the active project, the one that you have open and focused on screen. But like I've done in previous videos, while this will work, just passing in the number 0 like this, I always prefer to make a variable with that same value and pass that in instead. That way, it's just more readable. You know, when you come back to this script in a month's time to check out what you did or troubleshoot something, it's much easier to figure out what's going on here. You know, this function takes in the active project as an argument. That's very clear. Whereas if you just had 0, you know, you see that 0, it's like, well, you know, what does the 0 refer to? Is it something to do with the items? Is it, you know, what is it? It's not immediately clear, but this is immediately clear, and immediately clear is a good thing. So that's why I do it like that. Okay, so we do our initial check. If selected items is greater than 0, then we proceed. And what I mean by, you know, proceed or do not proceed is just that the rest of the script is wrapped underneath this if statement. So if this statement is not true, then we don't try and do any of this stuff. We only try and do any of this if there are more than 0 items selected. All right, so get a reference to the first item. Get selected media item. That's the one that we want. Returns a reference to the media item. So instead of media item, we're going to call it first item. And again, this requires a reference to the project. So we've got that. And it wants the first selected item. So remember, indexes start from 0, so 0 is the first one. Now, just like I was saying up here, you could make a variable for that just to make it even more readable. So first item index, or even better, first selected item index equals 0. And then it's crystal clear what this is referring to. I hope you would agree. Cool. So that'll get a reference to the item. Now we want to get the start position. So get media item info value. That one, yeah. So we've seen this a few times now. You can query different things, and the thing that we're going to query is the position. And so that D position is what you pass in for the parameter name here. And it returns a number. And instead of calling it number, we're going to call it first item start pos. We are passing in the first item. And D D position is what we're looking at. So that'll get the start pos of the first item. All right, so at this point we can prompt the user. We could have done it before now, but now is as good a time as any. So we get that get user inputs. Cool. Big string of stuff. So we got our success value. We don't usually use these. I haven't done this before, but a convention in Lua that maybe I'll introduce here is that if there's a bunch of variables being returned, but we don't actually use all of them, a common convention is just to do an underscore. So that kind of tells the reader that, like, yeah, there is a variable being populated here, but we're not going to do anything with it because we've called it underscore. So that is something that you can do. Yeah, so let's run with that because it is somewhat conventional to do it like that. I guess the downside of that is, like, as a reader, like, you have no idea what this is, but presumably it doesn't matter what it is, because if it did matter what it is, you wouldn't have called it underscore. I guess that's the thinking there. So if you're looking at someone else's code, maybe on GitHub or something like that, or in a forum, that's what the underscore is. Useful for you to be aware of. All right. But the variable that is returned that we do care about is the user input. So the title of this text box, hopefully you remember what we're doing here. Sorry, I should probably explain. This get user inputs function, this will make a prompt box come up on screen where the user can type in something and press OK, or they can click cancel, or they can hit the escape key and that will also cancel it. So there's different outcomes, and based on how we want the script to operate, there could be different things we do depending on what the user does with it. So number of inputs, we want one input from them, which is just a number telling us the seconds interval that they want. So the title is this first argument. What is grid interval? Just call it grid interval. Yep. And then here is where we'll say type interval in seconds. So going off the screen a bit. And then this last one is an empty string. Cool. All right. So now, this I guess we need to take a step back and sort of decide on the design or the user experience of this thing. Because in my mind, if the user doesn't type a number, we should probably do nothing. We shouldn't move any items around. Yeah, maybe you disagree with that. Maybe you might want a default value of 1 or something. The reason why I suggest that maybe we don't want to move stuff around is because if you've got these long clips and you have a default value of 1, if you're spacing them one second apart, you're going to get this like overshadowing thing. They're going to go on top of each other. And that really sucks. When you have a script that does something crazy that you didn't expect like that, it's really annoying as a user. So you want to prevent that. Presumably, if a user has long clips, they're sort of going to take that into account before running the script and typing in a number. But maybe they hit the hotkey by accident and they didn't want to do anything. You don't want to start moving stuff almost against their will, you know. So I would say that, yeah, if they don't type a number, probably don't do anything. So how do we check for that? All right. So one thing that we could do is if toNumber user input, then. Now we did come across this one in a previous video. The toNumber function, this isn't a Reaper function, this is a built-in Lua function, and it will convert a string to a number if it can. So what I mean by that is if the user types F, user input here will be a string, a single character string with the letter F. And then when you try and do the toNumber on it, toNumber will return a nil value, a value of nil. So what's happening here, maybe we'll write comments. It's a good one. If user input contains non-numeric characters, then toNumber user input will be nil. So this is a way of checking that they've written numbers, basically. So if they did write numbers, then we'll enter this F block, and then we'll proceed with the script. And if they didn't, then do nothing, right? If we are in here, then user input was not, yeah, so it either had non-numeric characters or it was empty. Does that make sense? So if you're in here that they typed something wrong, or they hit escape, or they hit OK without typing anything and left it blank, then we'll find ourselves in here, and then we don't do anything. So this rest of the script, this should happen here. Because if we're in this else, we do nothing, and then we just go end, and we're out. Okay. All right. So if to number, then proceed with the script. So if to number works, then local grid interval equals that same thing. So we do need to do this because at this point, this is still a string, so we can't actually use it for any arithmetic. We need to convert it to a number. And just to be clear, this doesn't reassign a number value onto this. This just returns a number value, but see how we're not assigning it to anything. We're just checking the validity of this action, basically. So that's why we have to actually do it again and now assign it onto a variable name so that we can use it later. So store that as a variable. So that's what we did there. Very nice. Cool. And now we're here. We're ready to do our loop-de-loops. So for as many times as there are selected items, get a reference to that item. So that will be done the same as up here, just with different arguments. So this will be item equals active project, but this time the index will be I each time. Cool. All right. And then the position, new position will be first item start pos plus grid interval times I. Now just to sort of talk through what's going to happen with this, because remember the first one doesn't move, right? But this loop, this for loop is going to affect the first item. So the first item, I is 0. So then let's do the numbers of this. New position of the first item is going to be first item position plus whatever our interval is times 0. So this is going to be 0. So first item start position plus 0. It actually doesn't move. So we're still going to move the item, but we're going to move it to the same spot. So it's going to appear as though it doesn't move. But then every subsequent iteration of this thing, they will move, because on the second one, I will be equal to 1. So this will be first item start pos plus the interval times 1. So it's going to move by 1 increment. When I equals 2, which is this one, it's going to be grid interval times 2. So it's going to move by, and so on and so forth. Hopefully you can see how that's gonna form. Cool. And now we move the item. So that is, good question. Set item position. Set media item position. There we go. Set media item position. Yes. Cool. So it can return a true or false value. We don't really need it to do that. We're not going to do anything with it, so you can just choose to not reference it back in your script. We're talking about a reference to the item. And the position is going to be new position. So hopefully you remember this one. I think we've come across this twice now. What this means is that the change will immediately be shown on screen. Yeah, I guess there are some uses why you wouldn't want that to happen, but with this, we do want it to happen. It's not a huge script, so everything's going to appear to move instantaneously. Yeah, so we can be refreshing the screen every time a change is made. Cool. Let's see how I did. I'm going to make these a bit smaller. There we go. Right. So I selected them all. Type your interval. Let's do 2. And there we go. So from here to here, there should be 2 seconds. Yep. And then from here to here, there should be 2. Nice. Here to here, another. Well, I didn't see what that said actually. Yeah, I mean it looks right. 2 and 4. Cool. And one more. Let's do 1.5. There we go. So yeah, I mean this is a script that I use really often when I have lots of different layers of things and I want to all align them so I can do different variations of blended components. It's really cool to be able to take all the top row and space them out, and then the second row space them all out, and they're sort of somewhat aligned. It's really cool to do it like that. Now, just to try one thing, I'm pretty sure it's going to work across tracks. I don't really see why it wouldn't, unless the references are a little out. Yeah. So one thing to bear in mind about this script actually is it might reorder some things. Potentially. I guess there isn't really a good way to... Yeah, let's do this. Let's just test that. So here I've got... come on, mate. So there's 01, 02, 03. Sorry, you can't really see the library down there because it's cropped out on the video. But I'm just picking these because they're already numbered. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay. So let's select them all. Run the script. Ooh, it put them over the top of each other. That's not good. Let's do it again. So 4 seconds. So 1, 4, 2, 5, 3. Yeah, so that is something to bear in mind. Maybe the order is a little bit unpredictable because you can see how it did that. It sort of ordered it by track like that. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. That hasn't been a problem for me because usually when I use this script, it's sort of yeah, the order hasn't really mattered to me, I suppose. I suppose if you did want the order to matter, you would do it by track. What's a circumstance where you would want the order to matter? I guess if these were already kind of aligned like this and you wanted it to be like that, I suppose what you would do then is you would run the script in multiple iterations. You know, you'd do that, and then you want these to align, so you do it in stages like this. You know, you would run the script each time for each subsequent track, and that way they stack on top of each other. So yeah, I feel like with this script you can achieve probably what you want out of it. Cool. Maybe let me know in the comments if there is something that this doesn't achieve. This is a script that I've been using for quite a while, and it's done everything that I needed it to, or expected it to. But if there's something lacking, yeah, let me know. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Last thing, I just want to set a hotkey for this. So that's my hotkey, like that. There we go. Oops, you can see I that was funny. Yeah, we didn't test that actually. We didn't test what happens when you write in gibberish, but yeah, as expected, it doesn't do anything. Cool. There you go. Hopefully you found that useful, and I'll see you in the next one.